The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of KSAX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. This is the Journey Radio Show. And hey, we're the She Squatchers. I'm Jen Cruz, your host, and I've got my teammate Jenna Grover on the line. Hi, Jenna. She's waving and on mute, so hello. Tammy couldn't join us tonight because I would like to give you some fabulous excuse, but the real excuse is she's making gluten-free Christmas cookies. So that was really, really, really important for tonight. So. And for people out there who are gluten-free, Tammy is too. And so you must know how important it is to have yummy yummies that you can actually eat and not get sick from. So shout out to Tammy, who's making wonderful Christmas cookies. So we've got an awesome guest for you tonight. We've got Adrian Lee joining us. He's a paranormal investigator, a psychic, a healer. He's an author. He's just amazing. And we met him at ValleyCon in October. So I wanted to bring him on the show and just have him share with us all the wonderful things he's doing in the amount of time they bear. So please welcome Adrian Lee. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you for having me on, ladies. I can't believe I'm second best at cookies. And by the way, that's a intro you've got there, isn't it?
Yeah, do you like
it? Okay, yeah, love it. I like.
Thank you for dancing into the show with us.
Of course.
Yeah, we had our first dance, Jenna. Look at that. Yeah. She's being mute. I don't know why she's so quiet tonight. She's still talking. So can't hear you. You're not on mute, and I cannot hear you. So. She's going to have to fix her equipment, either that or I don't know what's going on.
Perhaps she could shout louder. Where is she? We could hear if she shouts.
No, I don't think so. Nope, can't hear you. Even if you're swearing, I can't hear you, so it's okay. So anyway, back to Adrian. Adrian, tell us more about yourself so the listeners can get to know you a little bit.
Well, I'm British. I've got my flag behind me, so there's no getting away from it. The moment I open my mouth, you can tell I'm a London boy. And originally, I was a historian. I trained to be a historian. I have qualifications in history to the highest level. I lectured history and art throughout my career. And then I found myself in America. But I was the founder of the International Paranormal Society. We're a worldwide paranormal organization, non-profit. We've been around for 25 years. So I've investigated the paranormal all over the world. I run and started the International Paranormal Society. I'm an author. I think I've published about 15 books now, and I've done numerous TV shows. So I've experienced quite a lot, from UFOs to cryptozoology, all the way through to ghosts and hauntings. So you have me for an hour with all my anecdotes now.
Awesome. And, cryptozoology, that's our favorite, although we do have a background in paranormal too. But Bigfoot stole our heart. Didn't he, Jenna? She's saying yes.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
oh, I feel so good. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm just kidding. Welcome, Adrian.
Hello.
A little late.
Well, of course, you have a history background. So that's what I found fascinating. So you're coming at it from a historical perspective and looking into the paranormal. How has that been different from what other people are doing?
Well, you can only judge the present by what's left to you from the past. So the more we find of the past, the better we can judge current and contemporary society. And I think we need that on in the world. But 25 years ago, I wanted to prove that ghosts existed. I think I did that within the first few months. I don't need to convince you. I don't need to convince most of the people out there that ghosts exist. I've had people come up to me in a bar and say, I don't believe in ghosts. They have 3 or 4 drinks and then tell me 2 hours worth of anecdotes. And at the end of every story, ask me if that's a ghost or not. So I think we've established ghosts exist because every single person, even the non-believer, has a ghost story or things that have happened to them that are unexplainable, which of course puts that in the paranormal world. I think what I do differently is that I'm now of a mindset, and I've been doing this for decades now, of what do we then do with them? We don't need to prove they exist. That's already happened. What do we now do with that information? What do we now ask them? How do we get them to help us? So all of my books are written from a history perspective, where the ghosts and spirits I talk to give me historic evidence or tell me things that happened in their life or in the building or things around them going back several hundred years. And then that narrows down my research. If they give me their name, if they tell me dates, if they tell me things that happened there, I can go to the Historical Society and I can look them up and I find them. These people actually exist and I can have a picture of them. And I think progressively over the last few years, we've applied this way of interviewing ghosts to suddenly interviewing famous dead ghosts, celebrities that are deceased. So we're now looking to find out mysteries. We're looking to find out lost history retrieved from the lips of the dead on some of the events that took place that are very historic, like the crash site with Buddy Holly. Why did the plane crash? We've spoken to Lizzie Borden and asked her if she killed her father and her stepmother out there in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I've spoken to Jesse James on his farm in Missouri and asked him how many men he killed. I asked Al Capone if he was responsible for the St. Valentine's Day massacre. All of the history that's been lost to man, you can now ask almost like primary source material, the deceased, and retrieve that history. It's no longer lost. So this is what now informs my research and makes my books historically important outside of just writing about a ghost said hello, a ghost said help, a ghost said my name's Sally. This is important historical evidence now that's fully referenced based on the information we give.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's really interesting because I've been on so many paranormal investigations, and I don't think anybody has ever gone at it from a historical perspective that I've been in on before. So that's really interesting.
Well, we spend so many hours and days and years and decades in miserable antediluvian buildings, musty basements. I've been in the bottom of cargo freighters with rusting lead paint, asbestos everywhere, up to my knees in brackish lake water. There has to be a reason. And you two ladies know about intentions and how intentions work. So if I go to a specific location now, looking for a specific person with a list of notes, 3 or 4 pages of questions I want to ask, they're waiting for me by the time I've arrived. Who wouldn't want to talk to me to put the record straight? For example, Roger Peterson, who was the pilot of the Buddy Holly aeroplane that crashed, he was only 21, but he got blamed for that crash. So why don't you go and talk to the guy? He's buried at Storm Lake here in Iowa. You can go and talk to him with the intention that you can ask him why the plane crashed and what went wrong. People can exonerate themselves. People can say, I didn't do that, or I did do that. People like Wyatt Earp, for example, or Jesse James, it doesn't matter anymore if they tell me they killed 13 people because they're dead. It doesn't matter. They've suddenly, their tongues become loose because there's no consequences. Lizzie Borden has no issue telling me that she did that because what's the consequence of that? Everyone's long dead and turned to dust. It doesn't matter anymore. So we get a lot of responses because people then don't have that sense of ego. They don't have that sense of I must be quiet or I'm going to get into trouble. All that gets wiped to one side. And if you have an intention, if you go to a haunted building just with the idea that you're going to ask some random questions like who's here, can you see us? You know, you're not going with an intention. You're not going with a plan. Anyone who's creative will know that if you go with your camera and you've got an idea of what you want to capture as a photographer and how you want it to look and what you're going to do with it, is going to produce better photographs than if you just randomly walk into the woods hoping to see something that you find interesting. So the intention's very important, and I've never been let down. They've always arrived and they've always given me the information I wanted.
I like that. I like that a lot. You know, because I always think that sometimes the ghosts, when people go into these places often, paranormal investigations go frequent places often, I'm like, they must get tired of answering people all the time unless they have something that they want to share.
I'm sure some of the most famous axe murder houses that you're probably aware of in the Midwest and some of the most famous hotels have Ma and Pa teams going in there every single weekend And the three of us can come up with a list of all the questions they're going to ask. And they ask every time. And I'm sure the fish hole is fished out. The ice hole is fished out. If it was you or me, we'd just leave for the weekend, wouldn't we? I'd say, come on, pack your bags. We'll get in the ghost car and go somewhere fun. We're not going to have these people asking the same questions week in, week out. And the problem lies in the fact that when you watch some of the TV shows as well, or you go to some of the talks and lectures, a paranormal team will eulogize in the fact that they'll say, this EVP said, help me. And they play it. And I sit there thinking, so what did you do? Did you ask them what they wanted? Did you ask them what help they needed? They're so happy to get the help me that nothing then follows on from that. And so if you're a spirit that's constantly saying, help me, and everyone's just hugging each other and thinking that's a great EVP, and it doesn't then go anywhere, surely at some point you're going to give up, your energy is going to dissipate, or you're going to think, I'm just not going to be able to resolve this.
Exactly.
Adrian, when you were talking about asking historical questions to, people of past, what do you say to the people who say, you could be saying anything, you could be making that up?
Well, I do a lot of research. I feel like I'm a chat show host. So when you watch some of the great chat show hosts, all the way through from Johnny Carson and Jay Leno and everyone we know, they have notes, they have research, they know exactly what they want to ask, they know where to take the guest. And the great thing about being a chat show host is you know when to shut up and to let the person talk. So, for example, if I'm talking to Al Capone and I've chatted to him twice now in two separate locations, I want to make sure I have a specific set of questions that I want asked, but also I want to make sure that no one's pretending to be Al Capone. So I have a list of questions, and I just pick him as an example because he's the easiest perhaps. But I would speak in Italian. I would ask questions in Italian because his parents came from Naples and his first language at home was Italian. So if someone's pretending to be Al Capone, they're surely not going to be able to give me answers in Italian. I then asked things like, what instrument did you play in Alcatraz when you were in the band? What was your sister's name? What did you say your favorite meal was? I have a set of questions that I know the answer to through him being interviewed and through historical document, that if he strays from that, I can soon weed out a spirit that's pretending to be that individual. And I actually have recordings. You can hear them. You can actually hear Al Capone speaking to me in Italian. I actually said to him, and my Italian is appallingly bad, but I say things like, at one point, I said, il non capisco, sono inglese. I said, I'm not Italian. I don't speak Italian. I'm English. I don't understand you. And he responded in Italian that obviously you do. So the joke was that I said I can't speak Italian in Italian, and he responded and said, well, actually you can. So there was banter. There was a sense of backwards and forwards, if that helps to answer your question. And that's with every person I interview, whether they be Sinclair Lewis or Wyatt Earp or Robert Johnson and the Crossroads in northern Mississippi. I have the research, I understand what languages they speak and all the detail, and I make sure it's the right person I'm getting through.
Boy, that is a great answer, Adrian. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So I want to hear this Italian.
I think you've probably heard as much as I've got.
Jenna, can you speak any other languages like that?
No.
Okay. Dang
well,
it.
My background, my area of study is the early Italian Renaissance, and that's what I lectured. So I've actually lived in Italy, and I've spent a lot of time there doing research for my qualifications in early Italian Renaissance art. But of course, France is only 22 miles away, and that's the first language you would learn in Britain. So I learned a lot of French. I actually taught and lectured in Cologne and Vienna. So I'm not a good person for sitting in a lesson and learning. I'm a person that needs to be doing, which is a very masculine thing, but I learn languages better if I'm actually living in Vienna, or I'm actually living in Cologne, or I'm living in Paris, or I'm in Italy. I couldn't sit with a textbook in a classroom and learn those things. You're almost learning through osmosis, I think, to a certain degree. So just traveling has allowed me to have a little bit of each language. But of course, I would research. If I'm about to speak Italian to Al Capone, you can be sure I've researched all the phrases. When I was writing my book on the US Dakota War of 1862, I learned a lot of Dakota. The problem with that is that when they respond, you don't know what they're saying. So I then had the decoder listening to the responses I was given. So I remember a time when I was in the south of France in Nice, I ordered perfectly in French, and I ordered a steak in the best French you could possibly imagine. And then the woman said something back to me, which I didn't understand. And what she was actually trying to ask me was, how did I want the steak cooked? But what that highlights is the fact that you can have all the preparation, the sentences. You may have to do the research after the event when they start talking back to you, and you don't know what they could be saying anything at that point. It's difficult to research a response necessarily, but that comes in the evidence review.
So how many languages do you know fluently?
Fluently is a very broad statement to
Okay.
make, madam.
Semi-fluently?
I know French, I know German, I know a small amount of Italian, and Latin I know, because in Britain they still think it's useful to teach their kids dead languages. But if you know Latin, you pretty much have the derivative of every other language. So even if I can't speak Spanish, I understand sometimes what's being said, because the Latin is where it came from, and it all sits and comes from the same place. So if you know a little bit of enough languages, you can kind of piece things together to kind of get by. But in the worst case scenario, you just point to what you want.
Right, or use Babelfish. I'm really good at that.
That's true. That's true as well. We did actually put an app together when we did the Dakota War book, and it took about 5 to 6 years to research all the battlefields and the massacre sites. And I did that with the Dakota. We actually put an app together which enabled us to have a conversation where I would speak and say, "What's your name?" And it would then say that in Dakota. And that app is now available for everyone. So if you go online, there is a code
Oh, you cut out.
created
What did
out
you
of
say?
our investigations. And so we put an app together for the Dakota language. So that's now available to everyone if they want to look at that. But Dakota, I'm no expert on Native American culture, and you could probably tell me more, but I'm led to believe that in Dakota, the men speak a slightly different language to the women. And I think what's very funny for them is that when you saw the film Dances with Wolves, the lady that was teaching the actors Dakota was actually teaching it from a female point of view. So when they talk, they think it's very funny that they talk like a woman and not like a man would talk, is what I'm led to believe. But what do I know? A little knowledge is dangerous.
Look at, you're teaching us things right now. I gotta go
You
turn
know,
on that movie.
a lot of the native films where they brought native people in to be part of the film, sometimes when they're supposed to be speaking their language, they'll throw in really funny things, and then they'll say it in the language, and other people will laugh because they know what they're saying, but it just goes right over everybody else's heads. So
Well,
that's kind of fun.
I did try and learn some Dakota for the investigations, but being a European, it's easy to get a grasp of French, Italian, and German. As I said, it's from the same place. It all comes from Greek or Latin. With the Dakota language, as a European, I come to the table with nothing. Nothing looks familiar. The words, I'm starting from scratch at that perspective. So I found it really difficult to learn, and I'm glad we put the app together.
So you created this app?
Well, it wasn't done by me, but the Dakota that I was working with, one of the young lads was a sound engineer, and he started putting an app together where you could actually, like you mentioned earlier, you can get it translated. So we were out on battlefields with an iPad. I'd say a sentence like, "What's your name?" It would then be translated into that, and then we'd run our equipment to take that response to the Dakota in the Upper Sioux Agency, and they would have to tell me what it said. So you can't manipulate an EVP. People say, "Oh, you've created that," or "You're trying to hear what you want to hear." I don't know what's being said. I've then got to have a third person come in and say, what did they respond to that? But I will add that a lot of the Dakota I spoke to in spirit from 1862 had such good functional English that app wasn't used very often. If you think about Chief Little Crow, he was actually Episcopal, and he used to read the Bible. And if you've ever read an Episcopal Bible, he probably had better English than me, I would suspect. So there was 1 or 2 occasions where I was struggling to be understood, but the Dakota of 1862 had very good functional English. As complicated as you would think it would be.
Jenna, you're on mute.
I just
still-
keep saying, I keep want to hear, I keep hearing, I want to hear what you're saying, but you keep cutting out on me. Is that me?
No, he is
Oh,
cutting out here
darn.
and there, but it was enough for me
I'm
to
I
catch on what he was saying.
apologise. Well,
Huh?
I'm in a small tent in the Midwest Plains here. I'm actually in a cornfield in southwest Minnesota, and looking up at the stars right now. So I apologise.
Oh, you lucky. I love looking at the stars. So that's an okay excuse for me.
Perfect.
There you go. There you go. I know a little bit of the Dakota language, Washtay, which is good. But you know, when we've done paranormal investigations, like I was invited once to Nebraska to a reservation there where they were having some haunting. There was some children in that had died in this school, and they were still seeing the children, and so they were worried about this. So they asked if I would come down there with this paranormal team, and talk with the children, which I did. And we worked that out. Even though I didn't have a good grasp of the Dakota language, we were able to communicate with them. So that was quite interesting to me to do that.
The thing about being a psychic, of course, is you don't necessarily need the language. If I speak to someone who's died from Japan, or I speak to someone who's died from Brazil, if they think of a cat, they see the image of a cat. It's only had a name attached to it in both Portuguese and Japanese, but it's still a cat. So if I get the impression of a cat, or I get sent the imagery of a cat as a clairvoyant, language is an irrelevance. And you may be aware of this yourself, but I've had very basic communications with like horses and dogs and cats because they can think. I don't speak cat and I don't speak dog, but if a dog is hungry or it sees its bowl or it sees a cat, it has an understanding, it's sentient and has a thought process. So I have done a lot of readings for people that have struggled with horses that are feeling unwell or are not eating. And I've done some work with dogs and cats just because as a clairvoyant, you're getting thoughts and they can think as well as any human, to be honest. You know, so you can read thoughts and languages and irrelevance to a certain degree.
That's very, very true. I've actually had my native ancestors came to visit they've visited many times, but there was one particular time where they were bringing people and they were searching for their descendants that could still hear them. Because back in the day, it was very, very common for the people to be able to communicate with their ancestors. And these were natives from a really long time ago that were searching their descendants, looking for who could still hear them. And I could hear them in English, even though I know they never spoke English. So that was very, very, very interesting. And just the communication that they were having.
Very briefly, I will say to you that I've seen ghost horses, I've seen ghost cats, I've seen ghost dogs, but I haven't seen ghost birds, I haven't seen ghost tortoises or lizards. To haunt somewhere, you have to have an awareness of yourself. So if I want to haunt somewhere, I have to think myself there. I don't ghostly walk there or get in a ghost car. So to think yourself somewhere, you have to have an awareness of the self. Cats, dogs, and horses have an awareness of themselves. They know their name. Some of them look like they have an awareness of where they are in your family in terms of a pack. So a dog, a cat, and a horse has an awareness of itself, which then allows it to haunt because it can then think itself to other places. Birds, for example, that don't have an awareness of themselves then can't haunt because they can't think themselves into places because they have no awareness of the self. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, actually. But do you see shadow deer coming up on the road?
My eyes are black if you have a good look, which means they don't let much light in. So I don't see anything at night. I go past deer and buffalo and cows and all sorts of things. So I'm just merrily driving along because I don't see anything at night. So be warned, if I'm driving at night, you want a 10-minute head start. But of course, in the sun, I don't need to wear sunglasses. So I've never seen a ghost deer, but I'm not going to see anything at night. To be honest, not enough light gets let in, so I'm fumbling around at nighttime.
Are your eyes really black? I don't think I've ever seen anybody with black eyes before.
I mean, I don't know how well you can see them, but you can't tell the iris from the pupil. But yeah, Oh, you put your glasses on. Okay, well.
Wait, do I need to get my readers?
We're going to have to send us a picture later because it's hard
Yes,
to see.
please.
Okay. True enough.
Yes, because now I want to see this because I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can send you pictures. Yeah, I don't know what that means. My parents have quite dark eyes, I guess, but they're not black. But yeah,
Very interesting.
I just can't see anything at night. That's the problem, which is great for a paranormal investigator, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Exactly. We're all old enough to where need readers and regular glasses out looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah. You know, you've got this. A lot of this part of the world is Scandinavian, and everyone's got blue eyes or light-colored eyes, and that's great for nighttime. But I bet you're wearing sunglasses all day long, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. My eyes are green, but they change colors. And it's not
You've
just
got mood eyes,
dependent
have you?
on what
Depending
I'm
on what
wearing.
mood it is.
It's on my mood. It's really interesting.
What
It
colour
creeps
do they
people
go
out
if you're
sometimes.
unhappy? If you're unhappy, what colour do they go?
Sometimes
Red. She gets red, mean red.
Red.
No, I'm
no,
kidding.
that
She
she's
doesn't.
talking about the whites of my eyes. But they really, really emotional, they turn very green, like really bright. Very
So-
emotional. And so it could be good or bad emotion. So
What if you had a puncture on the side of the road? What if you had a flat tire? What colour are they going then?
oh, I'm not sure. I've only had a flat tire one time, and then the police officer was right there to change my tire for me, which was really nice.
This is the benefit of being a woman, isn't it?
It is. And you know what I say? I say, why should I learn how to change my tire? Because there's men in the world that don't feel like they're doing anything to help. And that's why I have a lot of clients who tell me that they play video games because they want to be a hero and they don't get to be a hero in real life. So they play the games to become a hero. So if I'm on the side of the road with a flat tire, I'm letting somebody be the hero and they love it.
That's
Well,
great, but I'm
more
going to know
important,
how to change a tire so I can do it just in case a guy doesn't come up. I do need to learn to change a tire.
They always
two
come.
things,
My age.
They
two
always
things two things I have to touch upon there. If you let people help you, if you believe in the idea that if you give freely, you receive freely, if you let people help you, that's then allowing them to receive help at some point in the future. So if someone tries to help you or give you something and you say no, you're messing up their go. That means they're not going to get future. So you're meant to say yes. You're meant to say thank you. That's very kind of you. You can be a hero by saying thank you. You can be a hero by helping an old woman put her shopping in the back of a car. You know, you've no idea what people are going through in life, and just a friendly word or a smile or just to engage with someone for a few minutes makes you
Sharing
a
a
hero.
story.
If you save one person, you save the world entire. So, you know, people need to remember that it's not about having a cape on, is it, and jumping from building to building.
You're exactly right.
I do have to say though, it's better to be prepared. Us gals need to know how to change tire. I'm sorry, but I do appreciate what you're saying because we talk about it too. You know, Jen was actually the first person to tell me that I can't be a winner all the time. She said, Jenna, you have to let other people win at games and things like that. And I thought, ah, but then I did because she told me to, and people did want to play with me more. Wait a minute, is this live? I want to take it back.
Well, this is
People wanted to
because her
play
and
with
I are
me.
such perfectionists that we play a game until we ace it, and then nobody wants to play with us anymore because they have zero
Well,
chance of winning. They just feel really dumb, and so I'm like, you can't do that. You can't stomp everybody every time, or they'll never
first
want
of
to
all,
play with you.
it's a little unfair if you're a psychic and you're playing cards or playing board games. I mean, you've got an added advantage there already. But if Jenna wants to win all the time, she's got to be an Aries.
I'm a Pisces.
Right? Oh, close enough.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So are
Leos kind of
Pisces
want to win
winners?
all the time, but I hold back. I hold back.
Well, there was a time when I'd do exactly the same, but I would perhaps let people win now. I don't think you want to keep your bullets until you need to use them. Do you know what I mean? I would not give everything all at once. I'd hold back and make them think. Do you remember those gambling sharks that would let you win a few games and then take all your
Bull
money
sharks.
off you? Isn't that a better way to go?
Yes.
All right. Well, with that thought, we're going to go to our commercial break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Adrien Lee. All right, we're on break.
Awesome. Do I keep
Yeah.
breaking up then? Is it, do I keep,
It's
you
been
keep-
okay now.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a little while, it was just like you'd talk and I'd be trying to listen to your words and I couldn't hear them. And I was like, no, because I did want to go out on that website you were talking about that you guys created, or not website,
An app.
an app.
Yeah, it's an app. Yeah. I'll have to send you the link. I can't remember. I finished writing that book about 3 years ago. The problem I have as an author is I've got 15 books out, and each one took 5 or 6 years, and I did write them concurrently. But when I go onto a show, people say, "Tell me about the book, Mysterious Minnesota." And I'm like, "Wow, I've written 14 books. I can't remember anything." You know, even though you've written a book about it and all the history, you have to kind of go back and think about that, because I've moved on to other books. I had to re-edit, and we did a second edition. We put a second edition out of Mysterious Midwest, and I had to read the book to make any changes and to add things to it. I added 20,000 words. But I read it, and I'm reading the book thinking, well, this is good. And I'm thinking, oh, I wrote this. You kind of get in the third person. You're reading a book, and because you've forgotten about it or you haven't read it since the moment it was published, you go back and read it and think, oh, I didn't do a bad job there. That's pretty good.
That's real
That
awesome.
happens
You
to
can
me too. When I've done
tap
readings
yourself.
and writing. I've done readings and writing, and then somebody will message me like years later and be like, I just got to tell you that what you told me was coming came true. And I'm like, I don't even remember you. And I have to go back and see what I wrote to them. And I'm like, oh, now, okay, that makes sense. Okay, but that sounded good. But I
I've
didn't
had
even remember writing it.
Yeah, I've had similar. I do a lot of drawings because I'm a clairvoyant and have a background in art. My psychic notes have a lot of drawings on them, and people will say to me a similar thing, and I'll say, "You're going to have to show me the drawings."
Welcome
People
back
show
to
me.
the show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is the Journey Radio Show, and hey, we're the She Squatchers. Won't you check us out online at shesquatchers.com? And hey, we have a YouTube channel. Won't you come and subscribe to us there and click the little bell for the notification? And we are also on Facebook and Instagram at She Squatchers Official. So please like and follow us there for all the up-to-date what's happening with us. We've got Adrian Lee with us tonight. He's sharing about his work in the paranormal and his books and all the things that he's been up to. And I'm so excited to learn more. Hi, Adrian. Continue telling us this amazing stuff, please.
That's very kind of you. I can talk quite a lot, but people tell me they like my accent. So I
do enjoy your accent. And I just, as I sat here listening to you, I thought I could listen to this all day long. But I wonder, do we sound as exotic as you sound to us?
Do you want the polite answer or the real answer?
Let's hear the reality. Come on, give it to us.
The problem is that I've lived in Minnesota now for about 14 years. And so I don't recognize it anymore. It's become the norm. But it's very interesting when Americans try to correct my English, and it always makes me laugh. You know, I'll say garage and they'll say garage. And there's certain things an American is trying to correct an Englishman's English always makes me smile.
That's funny. That's funny. And we have tomato and tomato, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I often go to the restaurant and ask for a tomato and basil soup, and they look at me as if I'm mad. I will tell you very briefly that there are people I talk to, and I may as well be speaking Russian. They don't understand a single word I'm saying. And I'll give you a brief example as well. I was in Wisconsin in the summer, and I was in a yard sale, which don't exist in Britain. So I've managed to embrace the yard sale, and all their rubbish can be my rubbish, of course. But I was talking, and the lady said to me, "Are you Australian?" And this always happens to me. Everyone in the Midwest thinks I'm Australian, but I couldn't have a more East London British accent, to be honest. So I said, "No, I'm English." And she said, "Oh, I was in England in the spring." And I said, "Well, which part of England are you in?" England's the size of New Hampshire, so I know most things, right? It's a small little country. So I said, "Which part of England are you in?" And she said, "Paris." And I thought, okay. And I said, "Well, did you like Paris?" And she said, "No, I hated it. I've got such a strong Wisconsin accent. No one can understand what I was saying." And I'm thinking, there's so much to unpack there. I didn't know where to start. There's so much going on. I could write an essay on that interaction. It was only 3 or 4 sentences, but that gives you a flavor of the things I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
So
Well, how
she's speaking
entertaining for
English
you.
to the French, and they don't understand her because they don't speak English.
Correct. And she thought Paris was in England, and she started the conversation by thinking I was Australian. I had to go lie down in a dark room with a washcloth on my face just to process that very small interaction. But
Oh
that's what,
my
and
God.
I don't fight back anymore. I just go with the flow. So
I
it's
love it.
comic gold that I just let them go. I don't correct them. I just let it go. People now say to me, where in Australia you're from? And I just make it up and say I'm from Perth. And they go away happy. I don't have to argue. I don't have to engage. It's now got to the point where I'll just go with whatever they think I am and they'll walk away happy.
I
See,
like
that's
this.
what we all have to do. Just say,
Right.
yep, yep,
That's right.
and just walk
That's
away.
exactly what happens. Yep, perfect. And they're having a great day and they met someone from Perth. How fabulous is
Yes,
that?
for Australia. How often do you meet Australians?
Never.
Hello to all of our Australian listeners. We do have them.
I love Australia, and I think that Australian accent is sexy. So keep it up.
It is.
I really do.
It is.
Australian accents are amazing.
So you like Russell Crowe and Liam Hemsworth? That works for you. Mel
You know,
Gibson?
it's not necessarily even having to look at them, but listening to them. I mean, well, yeah, I like to look at them too, but I mean, yeah, the accent does something, I think, to many women, all of these different accents.
Well, there's a sense of the exotic. When we were in small tribes and we were living, in a tribal society, the sense of the exotic was very important because what they wanted to do was breed outside of their tribes. So there's something that's exciting in the exotic because it then meant that you're adding different DNA and different backgrounds into your tribe as opposed to being with the same people over and over again for generations. So psychologically, there is something to be said about being interested in people from other places because that was what would keep our tribe strong when we were in the pre-medieval period, to be honest.
Well, I just learned something. Thank you.
Well, I know that was true here in America with the tribal with the Indian tribes. I know that was true, that they were trying to always marry with someone outside of their tribe so that they would have not a blood relative. But I didn't realize that was something that they did elsewhere across the ocean.
The thing is about language, and we're spending a lot of time on language and vernacular for some reason, but within Britain, there were so many small little tribes that there was a story of one tribe uprooting and just moving 30, 40 miles down the road, and they spoke in a completely different way to the tribe they met, and they thought they were being invaded, and they massacred them. And they were only from down the road. Within individual little pockets, you could have a completely different language. So I think it was important for them back in the day to intermingle with each other just to keep the bloodline strong and to not get all the diseases and all the things you'd associate with inbreeding, I guess.
Very true. All right, so I want to ask.
Yes.
What was your most incredible, to you, your opinion, emotionally, what was your most amazing paranormal experience?
Wow. There's a lot to choose from there, isn't there? I'm trying to think. There has been moments where I've kind of got teary and it's been emotional. I'm now trying to think what they are, of course. When people ask me these types of questions, I have seen full-bodied apparitions. I've had ghosts walk towards me and I've looked at them, in the eye. And we've kind of stared at each other. I'm trying to think of more emotive type situations. I'll tell you what's interesting. When I've talked to various famous people, they've asked me for things. So I was at Keith Whitley's grave, who was a very famous country singer back in the day, and he died in his 30s of alcoholism. He drank himself to death. And I was in the National Cemetery of Nashville, and I asked him if there was anything he wanted, and he asked me if he could have a beer. And I turned around to my colleague, who's one of my team leaders. We were filming, and I said, "Is it a good idea to bring a beer to someone who died of alcoholism?" And he said, "It doesn't matter, he's dead." So I think what's interesting is that a lot of people that have passed, especially the famous ones, as part of the process of interviewing them, I've asked them if there's anything they miss or anything they want me to bring them. And in that situation, Keith Whitley asked for a beer. Johnny Cash asked for a chocolate cake, and I brought him a chocolate cake. We went to the Sound Emporium in Nashville, where he recorded his albums in the 70s and brought a chocolate cake as a trigger object. Buddy Holly asked me for a hot dog. So if you're ever in the field in Iowa where the plane crashed, where the monument is, and there's a hot dog sat there, I put that there. So it's interesting. John Wayne asked for alcohol as well, actually. I investigated John Wayne's childhood home, and he asked me for alcohol as well, but he was a big drinker. I understand that you couldn't get any work out of John Wayne after noon. So every person that was filming, and the producers, the directors, tried to get as much done in the morning, because after noon, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, he was drunk and you couldn't get anything out of him. So I think emotively, the times that spirits have asked me specifically for things and I've been able to deliver. Roger Peterson, who was claimed to be responsible for the Buddy Holly crash, told me what happened. And I said I'd clear your name. I'd write in my book this interaction. And I said to him, if you want to come through, now's your chance. I've got all the equipment running. Tell me what happened. Exonerate yourself. Talk to me about what took place. And he gave me all the information and all of the details. So I think something emotionally takes place when you can clear the name of someone that died 70, 80 years ago, or even 200 years ago, and you can finally find them not guilty, or you can find the real information that means they can rest easier and they haven't got to spend the rest of their, I was going to say life, but clearly they're dead, the rest of their spirit life, having that over them, to be honest. So again, we talk about intentions, but if you go with a plan and say, if you tell me right now what happened, I might be the only person who has this equipment. I might be the only person you ever talk to. And it's now. This is the moment. And they tend to deliver. Who wouldn't? I mean, you'd deliver, wouldn't you, under those circumstances? Who wouldn't come through, right?
So this gives me all kinds of questions that pop into my mind. Can they taste the food or the drink? Are they able to taste it?
No, you don't have a physical body, but it's almost a sense of muscle memory. That's what they remember. That's what they miss. So a smoker is missing cigarettes, but they can't smoke a cigarette. An alcoholic is missing beer. This is why sometimes you go into a bar and you see all those drunks lined up on the bar on a Friday night, and they've all got that heavy, dark funk around them, because every alcoholic that's dead and in spirit in that bar is hanging around those alcoholics because they want to feel the same buzz and the same vibe, and you're carrying that with you. But I will use this moment to say you only have one physical life, and it's a very thin sliver, and we're in spirit for what's an eternity. So every spirit has told me they missed hugs, they miss kissing, they miss hot dogs, they miss beer. You know, my advice is to squeeze the pips out of every moment we have in a physical body. Feel the sun on your face, feel the rain on your skin, eat the hot dog, drink the glass of wine, make love and kiss and hug. Because when we're dead, those things are no longer available to us. And those are the things the spirits tell me that they're missing.
Well, I think I'm missing that too. I'm going to do it more.
More food.
Well, Christmas is coming up, so you've got a fantastic opportunity.
Yes.
I do.
Yes. I got to figure out what I'm going to make. Ooh. Not cookies. I've been into banana bread lately, just saying.
I've been making mince pies. Mince pies are a very British thing. And mince is almost like a substance that's made of sultanas, raisins, orange peel, sugar. It's a consistency that's very sweet. And you would roll out pastry, make little tarts in a sort of muffin tray. And the food I can't get over here, I make for myself.
Nice. You're a cookie then.
Absolutely, of course.
Wow. He writes, ladies and gentlemen. He cooks. What else do you do?
There's a lot of things I do badly, but I'm not about to advertise them on live radio.
Oh.
I only promote
Okay.
the things I'm good at, right?
Exactly. You got to focus on what you can do,
Right.
what you're good at. Exactly. You know, and that's okay, because I found that if you're really good at something and you lack in another thing, the people that are really good at those things come into your life and you complement each other, right?
I'd love to be able to strip a motorbike down to all its parts and put it back together again. But God didn't bestow that gift on me, which is how I pay other people now to do those things.
Very true. Very true. I never wanted to know how to do that, but that's okay. All right. So I had another question about the paranormal. So how, the ghosts that you're encountering, what is the oldest spirit that you've encountered? Like, how long have they been here?
That's a really good question, because if you'd have asked me that a couple of years ago, I'd have given you a completely different answer. Ghosts and spirits are energy, and energy dissipates. Einstein wrote about this in about 1904, I think, about energy dissipation. If you're a skeptic, when you die, a skeptic would say, well, the energy dissipates because you go into the ground and tree roots go through you and insects burrow into you and worms eat you. And that's how that energy is dissipated and is never lost. And if you get cremated, it gets turned into heat and light up a chimney. But if you're not skeptical, that energy continues after you've died. So that energy will dissipate over time. If I want to throw a cup across the room, slam a door, or even have footprints down a hallway, that involves energy, and it's not an endless supply. I've spoken to ghosts and spirits about this quite extensively, about what happens when their energy dissipates. And I have had good reactions to things like EM pumps. I tend to use electromagnetic field pumps to generate energy in the room, almost like a finger buffet. So if you'd have asked me this question about a year or two ago, I would have said to you, there's no spirit or ghost I've ever spoken to that goes back further than about 1850. Then what happened was the Mayfair Society, or the Mayflower Society, that's based in Plymouth, Massachusetts, asked me several years ago to investigate all their houses on Leyden Street and their church. And they were almost the first founding fathers that came to Massachusetts. And so I didn't think we'd get anyone come through, but I did actually manage to contact some of the Pilgrim Fathers, which of course dates back, if my memory serves me right, to about 1620. So I think if you can give them energy, they will come through. I don't think they'll come through on their own. But if you're now asking me the oldest spirit I've spoken to, it would have been one of the people that was on the Mayflower that came over to Plymouth Rock. But that's a very rare occurrence. Normally, I don't get much before 1850, to be honest.
Well, no, okay, so you're talking about dates and the older spirits and the energy and everything, and energy dissipate, how it dissipates. The older the spirit, the more energy it needs then? Is that what you're also trying to say?
Yeah, if you go, the further in history you go back, the less energy they have. They're just running out of energy all of the time. They may have used their last ounce of energy to talk to me, and then they're done. But there was an occasion, I was talking to a ghost in a railway station in Red Wing, and I was having a really good conversation. And I said, does your energy dissipate? Do you lose energy over time? And the ghost said yes. I think her name was Sally, actually, which I mentioned before. I've spoken to her several times. And I said, what happens to you when your energy runs out? She says, I die. And I said, you die? So I think you can die twice. I think you can die physically, but you can also die in spirit when your energy runs out. And I said, well, what happens when you die then? And she said, I go home. And I said, where's home? She said, Earth. So in that interaction, she's actually discussed reincarnation with me. She almost gave me the sense that when your energy dies, when you're in spirit, you come back and have another go, is what she was suggesting. But that opens up a whole... Go on.
Do you think that's karmic? Do you think that's karmic energy pulling people back to Earth to fix their karmic issues?
You could attach that to it. I think, without knowing the details, because this is all hypothesis, everything in life is cyclical. Even if you look at Buddhism and various things, you come back and it's all round and round and round. So I can't answer whether it's karmic or not, but I do believe you get more goes. And the spirits I've spoken to that were willing to give me the information that I had a good communication with, I've asked those questions, and those are the things that they've responded with. And you can listen to them. I've recorded them all, on my DVR. This isn't just me saying this. I can play you these recordings and you can hear them through the equipment giving me the answers.
It's just so interesting because there's so many different ways you can look at things.
Well, what's interesting, if I talk to a ghost from 1923, the ghost in 1923 is convinced it's 1923, tells me who the president is and says the room looks like it does in 1923. I'm in 2023 and I'm having a conversation in the same space. So either we're overlapping or he's come forward and I've gone back and we're time traveling. Now, based on that, if he's in 1923 and he genuinely believes it's 1923 and I'm in 2023, in 30 years' time, I could investigate in that room and speak to myself because I was there. I can have a conversation with myself at that point. So there's all sorts of crazy things going on in terms of how history overlaps all in one place. I don't think it's linear. You start here and end there. When the universe started, there was nothing and there was an explosion. So here's your explosion. On the outside of that explosion is him in 1923. In the middle of that explosion is me in 2023. And we're still speeding along and we're exploding. But we managed to be in the same place at the same time on different timelines from that initial explosion. And because he was on the outer edge here, because when things explode, they travel at different rates and come out at different places. This answers how that takes place.
But real quick, what if it's all happening at the exact same moment? All of these moments are happening at the exact same time.
I believe that's what's happening. Yeah, I genuinely believe that's what's taking place. You could argue that I'm not talking to ghosts at all. I'm just talking to a guy in 1923 who thinks it's 1923. He may not be dead. He just happens to be in 1923. So we could expand this and say that ghosts don't exist. We just happen to be talking to him in his time frame, and he's not dead yet.
I've had an experience like that made me wonder that when I
Right.
first had access to a spirit box, I was in my old office building, which was quite old. And I had a Reiki class and we were playing with the spirit box, and we ended up talking to an office worker who was in my office, and the way she responded to us was as if we were the ghost, and she was scared, and she was like, "What do you want? Why are you here? What do you want?" And I got the very strong sense that she thought that we were ghosts.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well. I was in the basement of a hotel from 1901 and I was running the ghost box. And again, it was a lady and she said, "Who are you? Get out of my lounge. I'm going to call the police." And I said, "I'm in the basement of a hotel." And I said where I was. And she said, "You're scaring me. Stop talking to me. I'm going to call the police." So what you've touched upon there, I've also experienced on the ghost box as well. And it would add evidence to that hypothesis that it's all happening all at the same time, which I genuinely believe, having done this for 25 years, is what's taking place.
So we have a question in the chat room. Sherry's asking, what does he think of the multiverse and the flow of time?
I'm doing a lot of work on that at the moment, actually. I'm doing a lot of research. One of my paranormal investigation team has come through to talk to us, to give us information. So I'm currently working on, and I'll try and keep this to 2 or 3 sentences. Steve, who's the producer and director of my TV show and also one of my team members, we've had his name come through so many times that we actually think he's trying to communicate with us from the future. So we have future Steve coming through. Now get your brain around this. Future Steve is coming through the equipment to tell us how to build the equipment so we can contact future Steve. So that's now a paradox. But the interesting thing is that we've had Steve come through on our equipment before I met Steve. So I've now found recordings of Steve coming through from 10 years ago all over America, but I've only known Steve for 18 months. But if you believe in that hypothesis, that could actually happen. So we're actually working on this in the here and now at the very moment. And one of our team members is actually contacting us from the future to tell us how to contact him so we can contact him in the future. So it's all a bit crazy at the moment. But yes, all of those things are true, I believe. And I've got evidence to back that up.
I love this.
It makes my brains hurt. I just color in for a living. I color in and look at art history. I'm not prepared for this.
This is getting me so excited. This conversation, it just excites me.
This
is our world,
you guys. Very insane. It's quantum physics is what's happening right now. Yeah.
Well, how does this play in then? So she's asking about the multiverse. So we're talking about then parallel universes, right? So how does that play into that? Or
well, it could be that it's not future Steve, it's Steve from another dimension. So it might be a better looking and more intelligent Steve. But yes, we don't know.
Hi, Steve.
We don't know whether it's we don't know at the moment whether it's future Steve. Steve has asked questions by the box that only Steve would know the answer to, and Steve has responded with the answer. And he was the only person on the planet that would know the answer. He asked the name of the boy that bullied him on the bus when he was in elementary school, and future Steve told him the name, and only Steve knew that information. But we're now getting to the point where we're going to ask for a number, and the future Steve's going to give us the number. We're then going to roll a dice, because future Steve would know what the dice roll is before we've rolled the dice. So we're now
I
doing
love this.
experiments where we ask him for a number. Steve says 4. We roll the dice and it's a 4. So he's giving us the answer before the question has been predetermined.
I want to play.
This is well, we
I
can
do.
do that, but this is a big difference from walking in a haunted building and saying, "Is anyone there? Can you say hello?" This is where we are now. I don't know what everyone else is doing, but this, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that how do you use them? What are you going to do with them? This is what I'm focusing on. I don't need to know a hello or anything else. That's irrelevant now. We're now looking at quantum physics and multi-dimensions and all kinds of crazy things. This is where we need to be.
Yes, I agree 100%. The
I'm
world is
there.
changing, and so are our brains.
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about Bigfoot much, but he falls into that multi-universe and that multi-dimension.
By golly, you guys, it's
Well,
almost done.
I was going to ask you, have you asked the ghosts on the spirit box about Bigfoot?
Yeah, and they've said they've seen him. Yeah, I've been in forests and woods where fur trappers were and where cabins were, over the last couple of 100 years. And I've said to the spirits, have you seen Bigfoot? Are you aware of him? Because who would know better than the spirits? I'm employing the spirits to help me. And to a person, they've all said, yes, they're aware of him and they're aware of who he is and what he is. So the spirits I've spoken to have all agreed that exists and that they've seen him in spirit. So I'm actually using the spirits on my Bigfoot investigations as well to show me where to go and what to do.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Let us know what they say for us.
I will run the ghost box this week and ask what they think. You might get future Jenna come through.
Oh my gosh, I would love to. I would so hang out with myself. Oh.
What's the first thing you'd ask her? What's the one thing you'd want me to ask future Jenna if I get a chance?
I think you just say, Jenna says I love you. That's all I want to say. Jenna says I love you.
In the future? Well, she knows that already. I'd ask if there's sandwiches. I like sandwiches. I'd ask really hard-hitting questions like, are there sandwiches in the future?
Oh, well, in case she doesn't know I love her, just let her know.
I will let her know and let you know what the response is.
All right. Oh, I can't wait, really. But if I think of a question, I'm going to type it to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. But we are coming to the end of the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners and our viewers how to find your books and your other things that you've got going on. I know they're going to be wanting to know this.
Well, it's easiest to go onto Amazon and search for Adrian Lee books, and you'll see all of my books there. I regularly do expos. I regularly do events. You can go to intparanormal.com or intparanormal.net, short for International Paranormal Society. So intparanormal.net. If you wish to see our shows, if you go to unscriptedparanormal.com, you can see all of the shows there. They're all free. There's also a Patreon site, again, Unscripted Paranormal. You'll see all the experiments with Steve, all the ghost box responses to all the multi-universe and future things we're doing is on that site, the Patreon site, if you want to look at all of our experiments and all the things we're doing. But Unscripted Paranormal is your friend. You'll see everything on there, all social media.
I love this. I love this. So I'm excited, and I know that I've browsed your books when you were at the table next to ours, and so many. So how many books do you have?
I think I'm on about 15 now, but obviously I don't have any social life, and I just sit here with my dog drinking tea all day long, so I managed to get through them quite quickly, I guess.
You may just have a better day than most people just doing that.
I have no complaints. There's a lot of people out there.
There are a lot of people out there. Well, thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Adrian for joining us tonight. And we'll hope he comes back another time and shares with us more, because I know everybody was really excited to hear from you. So thank you, and good night, everyone.